Welcome into another edition of the Day After podcast. We're doing this live, so if anybody sneaks in while we're doing it, welcome in. You guys are hardcore. You're about more hardcore than I am. Jason Staples and I were talking off the air. Very little sleep going around here. Buck's got his hourglass. I might need an alarm clock to wake me up if y'all talk too long. Buck, you and I have seen a lot of Carolina Duke games, and I want to say that one surprised me last night. I've seen a lot of games where I can't believe Carolina lost. Well, quite frankly, Buck, I can't believe Carolina won that game last night. Your take?
Yeah, it's certainly the kind of game they can lose pretty easily. There's been a lot of talk about this week about the 2016 game, but the one that I remember was from 2012. And Bryn Renner was quarterback, had Geo. It was 2012. It was Fedora's first year. They had a pretty good defense, and they went over there, and Duke seemed to run for 7 yards every time they touched the ball, which they actually did last night. They averaged 7.1 yards per carry, but so they did it for real last night. Um, Strangest things happened over in Durham. The Shaq Rashad um, almost killing a player running out on the field. All of that. It's just amazing the things that can go on over there, and it's particularly at night. So uh, it shouldn't surprise anyone that it went down to the way it did. I didn't think they were going to win either. Uh, well, I was watching it with my lovely wife Trish, and after they had the ball down near the goal line, well, it was around the 11-yard line, I think, and Duke actually threw the touchdown, and he got called back um, for illegal shift down there in the fourth quarter with minutes left to go. Um, I told her then when he caught that pass in the end zone that it's over. North Carolina's losing this game. They can't come back from this. And then flag, and then another flag, and then a sack maybe, and then they missed a field goal. So I think the football gods were smiling on North Carolina last night. Not necessarily smiling on its fans watching it, but they were smiling on the team. And Mac Brown's post game conference, the look on his face almost said, "We got away with one here. We stole one on the road." So, um, that's just the way things go over in Durham.
You nailed it right there. I feel like sometimes watching Carolina football, especially in games like this, they're trying to kill off all the fans with the play. Jason,
Almost worked last night.
it was hectic in that stadium too. I'll say this out the gate. I give Duke props on their game production. You can talk about the football game all you want, but the lights, the board, the music, all that stuff. They folks in Chapel Hill could learn a little bit about game production. Anyway, I digress. That's my soapbox. Jason, you play to win the game, and Carolina somehow won it. Your overall thoughts before we try to dig into some of these details?
Well, my first thought is that whoever made the decision on that particular uniform combination, they need to mothball those. I like those lids and all, even though it does kind of look like they got kicked in the head. I like the lids are fine, but they gotta have something that makes them distinctively Carolina on the field. So that's just something unrelated to the rest of the stuff. But I kept looking.
You'd like the blue look, right? The helmets and blue tops and blue bottoms.
Well, yeah, I mean that's fine with me, but I would have liked that chrome lid white with blue pants. Just have it so that when I look at the screen and before I went back and had to watch this a second time last night, I was watching two games at once, and when I'd look over, half the time I'd be like, "Which team is which again?" That shouldn't happen. So, lean into what makes the brand specific. But anyway, beyond that, like you said, you play to win the game. They found ways down the stretch to make it happen. really, to me, this game boiled down to the turnovers really changing this game. That's where, the 2 fumbles lost, that was really killer. And that it wasn't just that they got those turnovers, it was the timing of those turnovers. Because I mean, turnover margin was 0, but the timing of those turnovers when they had them really, really changed some things. And there were some situational things that happened in this game where I think Carolina was in position to blow this game open a couple times and just found a way to kind of trip over itself and then didn't get it done. And then Duke sees those opportunities. And, that's the thing. You play a good offense, and they are a good offense. You play a quality quarterback, and they got opportunistic, and Carolina had to sort of hang on in a game where they really could have run and hid. I mean, they were in position, they going in, they were in position to go up 17 points.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, just a couple little things that didn't go right. And then a few plays later, it's 3 points, and then you turn it over going in, and all of a sudden you go from being up 10 with the ball, go on their side of the 50, to suddenly you're down 4 points. That to me was really a wild sort of section of that game. And again, I think it comes down to just not being able to stack enough together to really blow this game open and change what Duke had to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's lose big, lose small, win small, but Carolina's right in the sweet spot of winning small. But let's talk a little bit about that section of the game. They have a 4th down stop, if my memory serves, and we were in the far end zone. And shout out to the Carolina folks that were there. It's pretty hyped up section, but they get a 4th down stop, and then they have a chance just to pound them. I didn't want them to take a shot to the end zone. I wanted just to see Carolina pound Duke and get into the end zone and push it to 17, and then they run a flea flicker or whatever, double reverse, flip it back. What are they doing? But that right there was one of them. Look, Phil Longo's the man deserves all the money he gets paid, and he's a great teacher and all that. But what were you thinking when you saw that play call, Buck? Is it just me and a couple thousand people that were behind me screaming at that play call, or were you surprised, or just give me something there? Just agree with me.
If you ask Mac Brown, he'll say he was disappointed in that play call because he did last night at the press conference. He was, they were talking about it, and he said, "Yeah, I didn't like that at all. I mean, what were we doing there? That was crazy." I think maybe he ought to have be a little bit more in touch with what's being called on the field there. But that's exactly what he said. Is that I didn't like that sequence there at all. So yeah, I do agree with you, Tommy. End of story.
Yeah, I haven't. I freely admit I hadn't listened to anything post game. So good. I'm glad I'm not the only one that was thinking about that. Jason, in that stretch, Carolina goes from up 10 with the ball, and I guess in the green zone, chance to go up 17. I think the game's over at that point, or it's pretty close to being over. And then the defense just loses their stuff. I mean, this is what's frustrating, and we need to talk about it. And I promise y'all we'll have a Drake May portion of the program. But on the defense, it's got to be maddening, and I think it's ultimately on the coaches. But they did not play well in the first half. They did not play well in the fourth quarter. They played solid football in the third quarter. What is going on that the consistency is so terribly inconsistent? I mean, if there are other teams that do it like this, I haven't seen them play, Jason.
One of them played at the same time as Carolina last night. But that's actually not that uncommon when you talk about a team that has that's first of all in a first year coordinator, and second of all, you've got enough. It's the best way to put this. Enough differences across the board in terms of which players are reliable on a consistent basis without where if you've got a defense where it's solid all the way across the board and you don't have any pieces that you can kind of target as an offense, and those guys are just solid, you're going to have less of that. If you're in a situation where you've got some players who are not always quite as reliable play in, play out, that's what you're going to get. And all you need is one guy to make a mistake on defense. We've talked about this for years. That's what defense does. You have one guy that gets his eyes inside and tries to get a little over aggressive with his with his assignment, and all of a sudden you've got a guy running free behind him for a long touchdown. You got a guy that takes just a little bit of the wrong angle from this spot, and all of a sudden quarterback has a seam and goes for 70 yards. It was the big plays that really killed him. And it's, one guy here, one guy here, two guys there, just not quite being in the right spot. And it's the lack of consistency on that's really killing him. And then you combine that with, they're still not making, I think they've made some strides on the defensive line, but they're still not affecting the game as much as you'd like to see, with getting guys in the backfield and getting penetration and really wrecking shop to force the offense to do some different things. They're still allowing offenses to dictate up front. And that's the other time that you're going to get some of that inconsistency. You're when you're doing a lot of reacting instead of dictating, then when the offense is able to kind of find the right button to push, then you're a step slow. So I think it's all of those things. And, again, against a well-coordinated and offense with a good quarterback, you also are going to have times where, you tip your cap too. So that is what it is. The bottom line is you did enough to win the football game, and, you go back and you try to learn and get a little better the next week.
Buck, I thought Carolina got pushed around on the line of scrimmage, defensive line of scrimmage, as bad as Notre Dame pushed them around. And it certainly looked that way in person at times. Duke had things, but the defense, and I want to get your take on what Jason just talked about, the inconsistency is maddening. And then the tackling, and then the flag tackling or the flag football tackling.
A couple guys made some business decisions in certain cases where if you watch the replay, it's like, dude, you got to actually decide to make a tackle here instead of pulling off in some ways that really hurt this football team. And I'll tell you what, if I'm coaching, that's definitely going to be brought up in some specific ways with some consequences.
Yeah, that the question is, what will those consequences be and how they handle it? But Buck, your thought on the physicality of the game? I thought Duke was more physical, to be honest. I could be wrong, but it certainly looked that way in person. How did it play out on the TV?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's much comparison between the physicality and particularly with the horses to impose that physicality between Notre Dame and Duke. That comparison is a little bit off.
Mm-hmm.
That's
the players themselves, though. No, the players themselves, I agree. The talent level there is drastically different. But what I saw on the field, I didn't think was too much terribly different.
Yeah. Well, instead of blaming the physicality, I'd go back to what Jason said about big plays. North Carolina does an excellent job of winning when they win the big plays. When they win explosive plays, they win the game about, I forget the stat now, it's 80% of the time. It's very high. And it is for most teams, but UNC probably more than most. Duke had eight passing plays of over 15 yards. North Carolina only had 7. And now this is a team with Drake Maye, Josh Downs, Antoine Green, those guys. And Duke had more big passing plays of more than 15 yards than North Carolina did. Rushing, as you would guess, because they got 3 bills worth of rushing offense. They had 9 rushing plays of 10 yards or more, and including a 74-yarder, a 38-yarder. They had some big plays. Go ahead, Jason.
They had, you said they had over 3 bills in rushing. 206 of that is on 9 plays.
Yeah.
I mean, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah. So when I think about getting beaten by a team, or they were more physical, typically, and I may be thinking about this wrong, be honest, but I think about a team that was more like the 2012 Duke team, because those guys, they ran the ball. I don't know how many times it ended up with a lot of rushing yards, but it just seemed like every time they ran the ball for 7 yards, they didn't run it for much further than that, but they get about 7 yards all the time. They were pushing North Carolina off the ball. The back would get what he could get, and they'd go to the next down. I didn't really think it was so much of a physicality problem. I think their offensive coordinator, Kevin Johns, over there is pretty good. And I think the play calls that they put in place, obviously, I think they've had this game circled on their calendar for a while. And I think they've been preparing for this kind of game against North Carolina for a while. So, for me, I think it was the big plays that made the difference that Jason alluded to. And if North Carolina, if Duke was a little bit more physical in some circumstances, maybe I could be convinced of that. But for the most part, for me, I think boiled down to the big plays.
Yep, Duke had 17 big plays, like you mentioned, for 373 yards of their total. They were chunking it up on Carolina. Jason, a question from the chat, and also a question I wanted to ask. It seemed like not the roster, but the snap counts from the Carolina Duke game, fewer guys played. They didn't rotate as many guys. Was that noticeable, or is it just, they're thinning it down because they had to have those guys out there? They didn't play. They played a lot on the defensive line. Did you see? And I'm gonna do this too. Travis Shaw was a beast. That dude was jacked on the sidelines. He was jacked in the game. What did you see as far as the rotation there on the defensive line that maybe surprised you or maybe didn't?
I wasn't really surprised by anything. I think the thing you have to remember is one of the reasons that they played so many defensive line against Miami is that Miami plays bigger personnel, and they're set up to run the football, from tight end, two tight end kind of thing, a lot of that stuff. And when Miami went big, they subbed more. Duke spreads you out a little bit more and runs out of that. I mean, again, Kevin Johns, we talked about this on the WCHL segment. Kevin Johns is he's a Mike Norvell protege, and what they did offensively, what Duke did was very similar to what Florida State had done the last 2 years. I mean, the game plans were very similar, and actually Riley Leonard looked a lot. I mean, Ware number 13 looked a lot like Jordan Travis, only a better thrower a number of times in this game. I mean, in terms of some of the runs that he had, you could have easily swapped out jerseys and said, oh, wow, that's the same thing. And similar results from the last couple of years in a lot of the run game stuff that they did. But Duke runs a lot of different stuff in terms of run game. I mean, that's sort of that coaching tree's hallmark. They're going to run a lot of different looks at you in the run game. And I think they went with the defensive front, the guys in the defensive front that they were confident could recognize and handle all that different variation and do all of that without slowing down. So I think that was a big factor. You're looking at less of again, when you play a team that's more like what Miami does, when they're wanting to get into a phone booth, I think you're going to try to play more players. When you're playing against a team that's a little more like Duke that wants to get you into a little bit more of a track meet, it calls for some different personnel. So I think that's more of what it was. Not really surprised. I think you're going to see rotation sort of loosen and tighten depending on certain games, depending on a lot of things this season.
That's a good
You
breakdown.
know, I'd like for Jason maybe this week when he's looking at doing his reviews and whatnot. I was just looking at it and I noticed last night um, that Cayman Rucker didn't scratch in the stats, defensive stats. And I went back and looked. I thought to myself, well, and I don't even remember seeing him. And so I went back and looked at the snap counts this morning. He was on the field for 33 snaps. Somehow or another, they did a good job of accounting for Mr. Rucker in some way that other teams have not been able to do. So, and maybe Jason knows off the top of his head what they were doing, but if he gets a chance to look at it in film study this week, I'd like to know what were they doing to Mr. Rucker? He was extraordinarily silent last night.
Well, the edges in general, I thought Duke did a really good job of handling North Carolina's edges, and they got a lot of their run game on the edge. Doing a lot of damage there, reaching or blocking down on the edge, and then finding ways to get guys free there. So that's definitely something I need to find a way to boil down for at least one of those videos this week. But yeah, they did a great job just scheming for and handling those edges.
Yeah, if you're listening to us and you're an Inside Carolina Premium subscriber, which I hope everybody is, the snap counts are up on the message boards. Noah Taylor led that defensive front with 65 snaps. Cedric Gray with 74 from the linebacker position. Kelly Grimes, Duck, Biggers, all 75. Boykin 70, and Will Hardy 10. And Will Hardy we talked about him a lot this week. He met with the press this week. He just happens to be in the right place at the right time and makes a great diving catch. Jason, the defensive backfield, we talked about the struggles defending the run. The defensive backfield made some plays, but they also made some head scratchers. What's sort of your breakdown there? I thought the late Duke throw to the sidelines when they were trying to get in field goal range at the end was classic cover two beater. Your take on what you saw from the defensive backfield specifically, and we talked about tackling already.
Yeah, I need to go back and look at that play. I don't think they were in cover two there.
Well, it's that deep out that's always open on Madden.
Yeah, they ran a little flood there, and then, I mean, it was a nice concept. It was a layered route where they're going to put a guy in conflict, and they're going to either take the shorter out or take that one, and it's a heck of a throw. I mean, you got about a 2-foot window, maybe a little bit bigger than that, and maybe a 2-yard window to put that in. It's a great throw, but yeah, I mean, the secondary, I think, is where a lot of the unevenness in terms of overall game flow comes from right now, because like you said, made some plays, got into some passing lanes. You had a near interception along the sideline on the one long throw from Grimes, got his hands on it, got to make that catch. Then you got the same guy who, jumped that route, looked really good doing it, who gets his eyes inside and gives up a slant and go for a touchdown in a key situation. I mean, that kind of typifies the secondary right now, where those guys are just not consistent enough in their technique, in their eye discipline, and just overall to be reliable. So, and there are some physical limitations back there too. I mean, that's true at certain spots, but yeah, they've got to find a way to be more consistent and to affect the game a little bit more. The more they can communicate just a little bit better, and the more they can get their eyes in the right spot, the more you'll see some of those little mistakes tighten up. You'll see some of those disappear if they can learn to be really focused on those little things. But they're still learning back there about, they're still, the accountability is still something they're figuring out back there.
But before we switch to the offense after the break, give me your defensive MVP. if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Noah Taylor.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good pick. I've been impressed to some extent, and I don't know if I would call him the player of the game, but Geo Biggers has played well. Um, of all the guys in the secondary, um, he really is. He's not making any business decisions back there. He's giving it his all on every play. So I'd give a shout out to Geo Biggers, and Boykin's got another sack this week, so you have to throw him in the mix. But Biggers did not come. I mean, he was a 3-star, high 3-star, but in his years prior to this one, he's not played a great deal. He's played some, not a lot, and certainly has not had a starting role in the North Carolina defense. So I like what I've seen from Geo Biggers, and that's the one name I would think of off the top of my head.
Geo plays smart. That's the thing. And, just as a rule, I mean, he makes mistakes once in a while, but, and there are times where just a lack of top end speed has affected him, but Geo plays smart. I'll go to battle with him for sure. The guy that, by the way, Tommy, that stuck out to me was Ced Gray. I don't think you win this football game without Ced Gray. There are a couple drives there where basically Ced Gray was the reason they got stops. And the first drive of the second half, he came out and he made a couple plays on that drive that stopped that drive, and that changed the game there. So I think that's my guy on that. That Ced Gray.
I'd throw in that Power Eccles led the team in tackles, so he was in on quite a few tackles. Ra Dilworth played last night, which is encouraging because he's been out hurt. But the thing before we move on to the offense, if I could say this, close up. What's really frustrating and what really has North Carolina fans, having life-ending thoughts is the incredible difference between they are capable of playing really good defense. On that fourth down, they got another goal line stand. They had 2 fourth down stops. They are capable of playing really good defense. And then all of a sudden they forget who they are, or for whatever reason, they lose their minds. And I think that's what drives North Carolina fans crazy, is that they see that they're capable of playing well, and they should be. There's a lot of talented players on that side of the ball, but for whatever reason, they have not put it together yet. And to be honest with you, I have lost confidence that that's going to happen this year. They may improve some. The bye week may help a little, but I think right now we kind of have to decide they are who they've shown us they are. When somebody shows you who they are, you're supposed to believe them. So I think that's just the way it is.
Yep, definitely a maddening bunch. I mean, come up and make huge plays, and then the next play or the next drive, it's like it's not the same guys out there. But it sort of is what it is, like you said, with Carolina defense at this point. Still 6-1. We're going to take a short break, talk about Johnny T-Shirt. JohnnyT-shirt.com, sponsors of the podcast, sponsors of Inside Carolina, and friends of you, the Inside Carolina Premium subscriber. Get all the gear you need. I saw a lot of Johnny T-shirt gear in Wally Wade Stadium last night, and the people that were wearing it were smart to use that 10% being an Inside Carolina Premium subscriber. So take care of Johnny T-shirt, alumni owned, operated on East Franklin Street, and also online. They bring it right to your house. National guys will pay the bills. This is the day after Duke edition. Another chaotic one in the rivalry. We'll be right back. We're back about 8:32 in the morning. Shout out to the 160 plus folks that are in here on a Sunday morning with us. Some great questions. I've asked Jason to look at the questions and maybe break some plays down this week, the next couple of weeks in the bye week. But let's flip over to the offense. And Buck, you close that segment, so I'll go to Jason for the Drake Maye portion of the program. Let's go ahead and do that. I mean, Maye's got to figure out how not to fumble. and one of those fumbles was a weird, fluky play. But the bottom line is, I'm not so sure that Duke didn't know what was coming on the last drive. They knew, here we go. Drake Maye is going to do his thing. Still a hell of an effort from the redshirt freshman.
Yeah, I mean, he at this point, what more can you say? I mean, it's Drake Maye doing Drake Maye things, as you basically have prohibited us from saying on the on the game plan podcast of like, what's the plan on offense? Well,
outside of Drake Maye, what's the plan?
Outside of Drake Maye doing Drake Maye things, what's the plan? Well, it turns out that that's a pretty good plan. And yeah, you're right though. That and I've been on this train for what, almost 6 weeks now. That the thing he's really got to clean up is ball security. And those 2 fumbles were killer. Now the thing is, as much as I get on him about ball security and being lackadaisical with the football and all of that mechanically, really both of those fumbles, neither of those fumbles was really fully on him either. So, in the one case, you've got an RPO where he's just trying to get it out a little quicker, and the back came and knocked the ball out as he's coming by. I mean, the back's got the pocket open for him to hand the ball off, which is what you teach the back to do. And he just came just a little tight. I need to look at it again, but it may have been that Drake's footwork was just a little bit too lackadaisical there and got him out of the spot where he would be expected to be, but it shouldn't have been. It didn't look like it to me. So at that point, maybe Caleb is a quarter yard closer than what you expect there. But that's an RPO. That's what you expect, and he made a quicker decision. He said, I know where I'm going with this right away based on defensive look, and he's already loading up to throw at that point, which you do all the time. I mean, this is routine stuff. And it just happened that the 1 out of 500 times that, the timing is just such that as he's loading up to throw the football, he gets a hit by his own guy. And then on the other, he's loading up to throw. And it was a good call, by the way, to reverse that. I mean, I was a little afraid of it as soon as I saw it live. It was like, uh-oh, that looked like it wasn't fully in his hand. And I saw a couple replays like, yeah, that's definitely going to get reversed. But again, that's a situation where you got a guy that came free just in time, and he has been at different points holding on to it just a little bit and trying to slide in the pocket to maximize those plays, and it just got hit at the wrong time in the throw. So, I've been critical there, but neither of those is an example where, it really had to do with him in terms of mechanics or being sloppy with the football. So you just kind of shrug and say, well, keep working on it and keep, trying to get the ball out a little quicker. But otherwise, I mean, you look at the stat line and you look at what he did in this game, you go, yeah, that guy's pretty good. 27 to 38 for 377, three touchdowns, no picks. Yeah, you'll take that. Driving him down to throw that touchdown at the end. All of those are good things. Nevertheless, it's amazing. As good as that guy is, there's still a lot of room to improve. There are a couple times where, I mean, I don't have the all 22 at this point, not yet, but a couple times I'm pretty sure there was someone he was missing where he had a few cases where he loaded up to throw and then kind of pulled it down. And I think he needed to let a couple of those loose and just didn't. And, in a couple cases gave up some sacks that he shouldn't have. As a result, that you've got the one, I mean, nearly cost his team down on the goal line at the end there by trying to run it and running for a 1 yard gain, and it cost him a down. So, they had to spike the ball. If he throws it out of the back of the end zone there, then you still have 3 shots to the end zone and you got plenty of time. But because they had to spike it, now you're down to 2 shots. Now, it didn't matter. He ended up making the next play, but you really, really don't want to end up in that spot. So certain things, again, little game management things, recognizing when he's got to take a shot, when he needs to get the ball out in a couple cases, still can improve. But dang, for that guy to be as good as he is and still have a lot of room to improve, the ceiling's still there. he missed 2 throws that were, just bad misses because of bad footwork. So, I mean, the ability, the ceiling, the fact that he's as good as he is and still has that much room to improve is just crazy.
Yeah, I thought he missed a couple of deep balls that if he leads them, they're touchdowns. But yeah, you talking about nitpicking. I mean, the guy's 28 for 38, 380, 3 touchdowns, and he runs for 70 yards. Buck, I mean, one thing that I love watching him play, right? But he threw to 9 different guys last night. We'll talk about Josh Downs having 9 for 126, but 9 different guys, and they threw out of the backfield. They threw some swings out of the backfield. I mean, but we've watched a lot of Carolina football. We've probably been watching Carolina football longer than Jason Staples has been alive. I know that you have, and I have too. I hadn't seen anything like it. Somebody asked me walking out of the stadium, this interesting take, said, does Carolina lose that game with Sam Howell at quarterback? I was like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to find out, though. Drake May's that good for this team. Where you stand, Bucka?
Well, yeah, I said in the article that I wrote for today, the morning after article, that anybody that did not lead with their analysis of this game with Drake May was burying the lead of the story of the game. For him to do what he's doing is just phenomenal. He is currently, I believe, tied with Marquise Williams in 2015, Sam Howell in 2021 for the most passing touchdowns in a single season, and he's played 7 games. And we're not talking about scrubs he's passing here now. Let me look. He's in 6th place now, tied with Sam and Marquise. And Marquise from 2015, when we talked about how all-world their offense was. He's going to easily, and maybe in the next couple of games, he'll be in 3rd place all time. Or, well, yeah, tied for 3rd place for a single season. It's just incredible what he's doing. And I'm not, I think it's a little too easy sometimes to focus on, well, his footwork is not perfect. He was a little, didn't see this receiver, that receiver, blah, 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 blah. I think it's a little too easy to do that. But when you look at the big picture of what he's doing, he's played 7 ball games, and he's tied for 6th all time single season passing touchdowns. Was it you, Jason, that said that took the over on the 30 passing touchdowns?
I think most of us took the over on the 30, but
I'm
I was
not
saying
sure I did.
be,
I may not
more.
have, but I mean, he's going to pass that probably, 2 games from now. It wouldn't surprise me. 2 games he'll have those 30 touchdowns. It's just completely amazing. And plus, you correctly brought up the fact that he can run the ball. And he's good at it. He runs the ball well. He's finally seems to have broke himself with the habit of trying to, leapfrog people. But it's just amazing what we're seeing, and I'm not even sure we all appreciate this. And to a certain extent, we've been spoiled because if you look at the single season records, only the guy that's in 7th place, Chris Keldorf, played before the turn of the century. He played in 1996. All the rest of the single season records are like 2019, 2020, 2016, 2012, 2011, 2015, 2020. So, yeah, we're in a different era now where guys are throwing a lot of touchdown passes. But Drake May is just in another stratosphere. And if you look at the ACC in QBR, and if I told you I knew exactly what these numbers meant, I'd be lying because they're pretty much proprietary. But his QBR number is 88.1. The next best quarterback in QBR in the ACC is Jordan Travis at 78.2, 10 points behind Drake Maye. And I'm assuming the highest you can go is 100 here. So, and he's, that much better than the next best quarterback in the ACC.
And the ACC has the best slate of quarterbacks in the country in terms of any conference. So
on the whole,
yeah, it's just amazing how he's playing, and I'm not sure we fully appreciate what we're seeing on the field. And we're kind of used to it, and we're a little spoiled by. We just had 3 years of Sam Howell, who was no slacker, by the way. He threw 38 touchdown passes his first year at quarterback in 2019, which is the record is 38. Which if I had to bet money, I would say Drake is going to own that record before he's over with. He has to average 2.5 touchdown passes a week, and he'll break that record. So I think we could kind of be on the lookout for that. So yeah, I mean, we really should, and I know you're talking about, well, we just can't talk about Drake Maye 24/7. Maybe we should, because I'm not sure. Like the question you were asked, does North Carolina win that game with Sam Howell? I'm not sure the answer is yes. And there's a couple more this year that I think North Carolina won that they may not have with Sam, as good as he was. So we'll see.
Yeah, it was it's something. I mean, I joke about the Drake Maye portion of the program, but it literally is every week. We can debate whether Carolina needs to do something not to have to rely on that every week, but the bottom line, he's come through 6 out of the 7 times this season. Jason, let's look around the offense, and a lot of people are talking about Elijah Green. One of the comments I liked, and I apologize to whoever posted it because I can't find it right now, is it's good to have those fresh legs later in the season. I thought Elijah Green looked solid, and on the touchdown run, that was another one of those where has that been moments. Maybe it's just to get the opportunity to do it. I thought Caleb Hood may have gotten banged up. I saw him running off at some point with his arm down like it was a shoulder. Don't know why, but bottom line is your take on Elijah Green's performance. I mean, this running back room's got some talent, and they spread it out a little bit yesterday. Muted. I get to say Jason is muted.
That's not the first time this year you've been muted.
I think that's number 2 right there. So,
I don't think I've been muted this year so far.
Oh, I remember.
I'm not using my mute button.
I think I'm one ahead of you. There was one. There
Y'all
was one.
Y'all in the race for the mute.
Yeah, we're trying. We're professionals here. So
and the hourglass.
Yeah. So, Elijah Green. Interesting thing is when he got snaps earlier in the year, it was mostly against FAMU. He actually probably was the most efficient, effective back in that game. But it was late. Kind of got carries in garbage time and so on. So you don't know where to kind of put that. Well, I'll tell you right now, with how he ran in this game, I'm looking at him as my number 2, and certainly a guy that's in my rotation for the remainder of football season. Because the way that he saw seams and got vertical right now and did that, and I think he's the fastest back on the team. I mean, Petaway might have something to say about that, but in a straight line, I think he probably is the fastest guy. That speed, that burst flashed, and the ability to just stick the foot in the ground, get vertical, and suddenly be in the secondary, something that they've got to have a little bit of. And, he can be a little bit of the lightning to the thunder of the other couple guys that they've been riding so far. So, yeah, I think he's earned some more looks. He's got some time. So, yeah, that's good for him. I mean, the thing is, a lot of guys who were in his shoes earlier this year, who, when he was kind of out of the rotation, a lot of guys would, potentially, start looking with an eye to the portal at that point. And he just kept chopping wood and kept doing his job and found his way on the field, and then earned more play by answering the bell as soon as he got his hands on the football. And also not just hands on the football, but other aspects of his assignments. He'll grade out well this game. And as soon as you get that, now he's going to have some other opportunities. And it'll be interesting to see the second half of the season. I think they've found really the guys that are most prepared to help at running back right now. And they're the old heads. They're guys that have been on campus just a little bit longer with Caleb Hood and Elijah Green. Those have been the most effective backs on the field so far this year. And I think in those last 5 games, I think those guys have to be getting a little bit more of the bulk of the carries.
Yeah, somebody pointed out in chat, so I went and found it. Mac did talk about Green broke his thumb earlier in the year, so that's kept him off the field. Look, he's taking advantage of whatever opportunities he gets. It's pretty cool. His family was on the same row of us. That was a happy bunch watching him make plays. And I agree. I mean, he just looked different out there. There was no hesitation, certainly no dancing. Makes the play to score a touchdown. But we could talk about Josh Downs every game. But let's talk. This guy is just there was a pass, and this is the cool thing about the corner angle. We were in section 1, and you could see the way the play's open. Josh Downs comes down, he's running an out route, and Drake throws it behind him. And I'm like, that's a pick, because the cornerback's right there, and Josh stops and reaches back across his body and makes the catch. I mean, we can talk about how good Drake Maye is, and he's elite. But Josh Downs, Buck, let's have a Josh Downs portion of the program. 9 catches, 126, 14 yards a catch. Every time he touches the ball, it's a walking first down. Your take there before we get close to wrapping this one up.
Josh Downs is one of those guys I'm not comparing the two, obviously, but Michael Jordan, in the sense that he seems to be able to change the direction his body is moving after he leaves his feet. And how you do that, I don't have any idea.
Not anything we could do.
Not anything. Well, I couldn't have done that. Maybe under the influence of, but that was a long time ago. It's incredible. And yes, we should cram a lot of sugar down Josh Downs' throat as well. But I'm going to diverge here a little bit. Y'all can get back to Downs if you want to. But we're talking about the 9 receivers that Maye threw the ball to. 2 of them had over 100 yards, both him and Green. He had 126. Green had 104, something like that. Over 100 yards on 4 catches. And then they pulled, believe it or not, Josh Downs out of the game and put Pursuer in. He had a couple of catches. They pulled probably Green out of the game, I think, and Jones had a few catches. And they hit both tight ends. Kamari Morales now has 4 touchdown receptions. He's 1 away from tying his record for the most touchdown catches by a tight end. And Maye has thrown 7 touchdown passes to tight ends this year in 7 games. Then you got the involvement of the running backs. Hood had 5 catches, including a touchdown catch. And Elijah Green, who we always heard that what was holding him back a little bit was his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. He had a catch for 8 yards. So Maye, back to Maye again, involved all the wide receivers that were on the field, and including the reserves coming in for Downs and Green, plus got the tight ends involved, including a touchdown pass, plus got the running backs involved, including a touchdown pass. He involved every offensive room on the field, and just a remarkable. And it's remarkable how well North Carolina has brought all of that together. I think Galloway's done a good job with the receivers this year. Haven't seen a lot of drops. That problem, whatever that problem was back in the day, they seem to have gotten corrected. So yeah, and Downs is a great player, maybe the best wide receiver that's ever walked on a field in a UNC uniform. But unlike last year, it's not Josh Downs or bust, play to play. Maye has other places he could go with the football, and he doesn't hesitate to do it, which is a big change from what Sam Howell faced last year.
Jason, you talked about when he was out that how Downs affects the game, not just with his numbers. I think we're seeing that now. Granted, May slings it around to multiple guys, but how much of that the other guys getting touches and all and being open is a result of Josh Downs out there? And I must Josh Downs' catch where that ball was thrown into the first row of the stands and he somehow got his left foot down while in the lap of the coaching staff. Another great catch. But how much of Downs' effect doesn't show up in the box score?
I've said this before. It's like Steph Curry with the gravity that he has. That you're gonna make sure that the defense knows where he is, and that there's not a single. You don't want him to be in a whole lot of single coverage, and that's really the thing. Is that you can notice where the safeties are playing, and note that they know where he is. That guy's got his eyes just a little bit more to over in that spot. So that's a factor for sure. But the other thing though that I think we ought to mention is there's another guy that's causing some gravity as well, and that's Antoine Green. I mean, the thing is, you can't actually. It's sort of like Klay Thompson out there now. You got Steph doing his thing, and the defense wants to have all its gravity towards Steph, but then all of a sudden Klay Thompson's out there and gets hot, and now you can't slide that safety over as much. And Antoine Green's been making big plays down the field, and the things that De'Ami Brown did 2 years ago is the stuff that Antoine Green's doing now, where he's just running by guys and making consistent catches down the field. So now that basically means that defenses can't focus as much on Downs as they'd like. And that's part of why you can get to stat lines for Josh Downs again, where you got 9 catches on 11 targets, because they're focused on him. They don't want you to be able to get to him, but they can't bracket him as much as they used to. So what you're having now is you're having some shared gravity between some of these receivers who stepped up and done it. And the thing is, I mean, they've got guys that are not playing as much that are pretty good. I mean, Kobe Paysor, 2 targets, 2 catches, didn't play all that many snaps. I'm got to look at the snap count here. I mean, Paysor played 20 snaps. Look, we saw what he's capable of earlier in the year. We saw what Gavin Blackwell's capable of earlier in the year. But Green and Downs have been so good that you don't want to take them off the field. So, and anybody that's saying those other guys should go out there and get more snaps, well, which one of those guys are you taking off the field right now?
Exactly.
Yeah, those guys have made life a whole lot easier for a first-year starting quarterback because they're consistently open. And I haven't looked at the drop numbers, but I think Green has dropped 1 ball, maybe 2 on the year, and Josh Downs maybe 1. So, I mean, you're talking about a lot of consistency from those guys as well. So big plays, consistency, and finding ways to get open. It's been pretty good for the Carolina receiving core on the year.
Yeah. The point about you want other guys to get more snaps. Who do you take off the field? I mean, If unless they're gonna run 9 wide and have Corey Gaynor snap it to Drake and have all those guys out there, it's a good problem to have, which is one of the reasons. And I'm gonna let you guys close it with closing thoughts, but one of the reasons that's so frustrating watching the defense, right? Because it is very similar talent levels on both sides of the ball, and one unit is verging on elite, and the other unit puts up one like they did against Duke. But close the show. And folks listening to this, there'll be plenty of content. It is a bye week, so we won't have On the Beat Live. Probably won't have the game plan podcast, but there'll be a ton more content. Some Jason Staples breakdowns, and of course, Buck's great columns Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But Buck, your overall thoughts on this? It's Duke, Carolina, so you knew it was going to be crazy. Anybody? Why the heck I picked it to be a blowout? I guess I'll never learn. But close it for us, Buck.
6-1.
That's it. We're gonna end it that way. 6-1. Bowl eligible.
6-1.
Bowl eligible on October 16th. North Carolina 6-1 beats Duke 38-35. Just some unbelievable sports yesterday.
I'll throw this in there. There are people that, and that's certainly their right and in keeping with their general character, that just tend to be critical, negative people, which is fine. There's takes more than one kind of person to make the world go round. So that's fine. But when you are watching a team like North Carolina and they're, say, instead of 6-1, they're 3-3 or 2-4. And you talk about maybe things that you've seen that leads you to believe, well, they're going to get better, blah, blah, blah. And they'll, pound their shoe on the desk and say, well, you are what your record says you are. You are what your record says you are. Well, what their record is 6-1 right now. So you are who your record says you are.
Enjoy the ride. It's a heck of one. Like I said, that game was ridiculous. And yesterday in sports in general, just some ridiculous football, ridiculous baseball games. Great time to be a sports fan. Good time to be a North Carolina fan. Team 6-1 with multiple flaws that can be corrected, maybe. And to Jason's point about Drake Maye, he's so good and he can be so much better. It's got to be a fun time to watch.
Haven't even had to use this today.
I know, really. And we're getting out of here right at an hour, too. And Jason, here's what I want to see. I want to see about 3 or 4 breakdowns this week and lay it all out for Carolina, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we will catch up with you guys again, I guess, I don't know, a couple weeks before Pittsburgh. It's been fun, boys.
Later, guys.
Later.